people will commit, you know, a lot of their sense of identity and their place in the world sometimes, and this is maybe the definition of an ideologue, to their ideology. And you know, that's true on the right and the left and in the middle.
Right.
And some of those really hardcore folks are never going to let go of that. And eventually they'll hold sway again. You know, hopefully it'll be a few generations, but these things are cyclic. It's always 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Right. So these are just some of the first steps out of the wilderness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, looking back on the election, we sort of had this painful fault line in Vermont of you know, bluest of the blue, you know, gave Obama 67%, but the Democrats and the progressives having trouble, I don't know, coordinating or even liking each other, and you were to be commended for putting forth an initiative. I guess really seeing and enacting the power of the blogosphere to maybe be a source for mending. If you want to talk a little bit about, I don't know, what you hope can happen.
Well, there's a lot of things that we want to talk about. You're referring to this meeting that we're going to have on the 6th. It's here in Montpelier, a meeting of a lot of folks who are sort of active on the blogs, sort of engaged in new media, but also opening it up to folks otherwise involved. And this is a Democratic-focused thing, but not an exclusively Democratic Party event. Obviously, it's taking place outside the party. I refer to bringing people in who are either not just self-identified Democrats, but Democratic stakeholders, people who may not identify as Dems, but have a stake in the Democrats being functional and progressive.
Okay, like putting up a slate of candidates every election.
Yeah, I mean, if you're depending on and you know, all of us to some degree on the left are depending on the Democrats in the state house to come through and do their job. So I mean, there's a sense that we're all stakeholders in that way, but it's I mean just to make it distinct from another one of these sort of anti-Dem, you know, Democratic Party is evil, no different from the Republicans throw them all out meetings, because sort of, you know, those are a dime a dozen. They happen all the time, everywhere. Who cares?
Right.
We want to talk solutions. But yeah, and I mean the issue between the Democrats and the progressives is just a part of that. There's a lot of concerns over the condition of the sort of Democratic Party apparatus in the state. Concerns over how the Democratic Party coordinated campaign was run, and that some of the relationships and resources have broken down, and that could bode ill for future election cycles. You know, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the incredible, you know, going from this vacuum of where are the leading Democrats stepping up. You know, nobody stepped up last election, and until the absolute last possible minute, when it was simply impossible to pull together enough of a campaign to win. You know, what's the story there? Do we need some new faces? Where can we find them if these folks aren't going to step up because they're all terrified of Jim Douglas? Then, you know, when somebody does step up for, say, lieutenant governor, when Tom Costello stepped up, where were all the A-list Dems getting behind him? You know, the hubbub was that they weren't all that interested, because then they don't necessarily want another big player to compete for
the potential governor.
Potential governorship.
Right, right.
So this is all dysfunctional nonsense, and it's all going to be on the table, and it's a lot to cover in one meeting, so there will be more. But I want to get it all out there, and we've gotten some really interesting. You know, I'm not going to name names right now, but sort of RSVPs, combinations of folks who are, you know, engaged in the new media, but also from interest groups, and who are like, yeah, we want to be part of this conversation. And it'll also potentially dovetail with the conversation they're having up in Burlington 2 days before, something sponsored, I guess, by 7 Days, where there's going to have a why can't D's and P's get along public forum.
That's framed more as a, why is this a problem, as opposed to what are the solutions? Is that the sense you get out of that? Is that more the focus of it? It's like sort of analyzing the rift?
Yeah, I think it's more of a public forum, analytical, sort of academic exercise. I have no idea what they have in mind.
Right.
It's a sense I got that it would be that sort of thing, as opposed to, this meeting on the 6th, which is going to be essentially a small working group of how do we
Move the ball.
how do we get out of these ruts?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's the next step?
It seems to me that, and I guess I'm coming back to the legislation question, that if there were specific pieces of legislation that the Dems and the Progressives agreed on and could get behind and had a success with, veto-proof, there'd be a I don't know, sort of success builds teamwork or something, or you need teamwork to build success. I don't know which chicken before egg, but I mean, I just think if there's a legislative agenda that you can say these things, and it's tough when you see revenues drying up, but it just seems like finding points of agreement legislatively as opposed to focusing on the next election, but actually working these 2 years and having a track record and being able to go to the voters.
Well, the problem is there's a lot of arenas. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there certainly has been a lot of good work together between the Democrats and Progressives. I mean, Gay Symington has, in the last session, maybe 2 sessions, gave Representative Zuckerman from Burlington a committee chair. He's been the ag chair, and that's a really good sign of that. Now, some of the problems with the veto stuff have sometimes been 1 or 2 sort of weenie crats, sort of hanging out there and being the 1 or 2 votes that don't make it go through.
Right.
Well, we managed to get rid of a few of those this time around, so that'll be nice. Hopefully, it can be a tighter caucus. But the thing is that legislative arena is distinct from the electoral arena. And the electoral arena, there's the statewide, there's each individual local one
within there,
and all of these things have different dynamics.
Yeah, it's a patchwork. Huh?
It is a patchwork, and especially then when you get into, I mean, the Democratic Party and the Progressive Party, they're both political parties, but that's about where the similarities end. A lot of the reason for the difference is sheer size. I mean, there are so many more Democrats. They have all these statewide offices. They have the federal delegation. There's lots of different lobes of the Democratic Party that function both independently and hopefully, when it works, cooperatively, just by necessity, just as a matter of organizational practicality. Progressives they've got a statewide infrastructure at that sort of political party, town committee, county committee level, but that's largely it. I mean, they don't have to have all these other pieces that have to coordinate. So they're a much more sort of linear, hierarchical organization. And I think a lot of the frustration, a lot of times that progressives have with Democrats, and I certainly know it's why some of them left from the Progressive Party to begin with, is why can't the Democrats,
it's the herding cats,
right? Why can't they have this kind of command and control thing? So when somebody runs over here, well, why did the Democrats run that person? Well, maybe it wasn't the Democrats. Maybe it was just this one Democrat over here decided, oh, I want to run.
Yeah.
So it's tough. They're really different animals.
Do you know the gains in the legislature? It's a more Democratic House and Senate. Is that
the
right?
numbers. I don't remember the numbers now.
Is that the case? I mean, we on the margins both. It's more Democratic in both the House and Senate by a little. I think.
Oh, than it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, overall by a smidgen.
Yeah. So that's
And then we just
Unity.
picked up another one for sure with the recount in Barrie, where
Poirier?
Paul Poirier's back.
Great. Good news.
His 3rd comeback. It's great. Oh, Paul's a good guy. It'll be good to have him back.
Okay. So it'll be fun in 09 to get the ball rolling here. And thanks for tuning in, people. VTblogosphereTV is signing off. Appreciate it, John.
My pleasure.
I made a mistake in presuming that the self-interest of organizations, specifically banks and others, was such as that they were best capable of protecting their own shareholders. So competition and free markets did break down, and I think that, as I said, shocked me. I still do not fully understand why it happened, and obviously to the extent that I figure out where it happened and why, I will change my views. And if the facts change, I will change.
In other words, you found that your view of the world, your ideology was not right. It was not working.
Precisely.